why thyroid is the number one autoimmune condition right now. It was the first autoimmune condition actually officially on the books. But thyroid is impacting everything in our body. There's nothing in the body that isn't impacted by how the thyroid functions at some level. And what we find, especially for women, though men too, is that when you're not expressing yourself, like literally communicating. So think of the concept of your throat. Your thyroid sits right here. If you're not expressing and you're holding back and you are swallowing how you really feel and you feel disempowered, your thyroid, it's in that same area, will actually start getting attacked. So what we find, as my husband likes to say it this way, are you expressing yourself to your full content? And you really think about that statement, are you expressing yourself to your full content? Most of us aren't, because we feel like we're supposed to be a certain way, or we were raised to think we were supposed to be this person, but internally we know we're not.
Welcome, Kirstin. It is so good to see you again. This is the second time you've been on my podcast, which is awesome. And we've just been discussing how it's 7 a.m. where you are now.
It is.
Where are you? In Arizona?
Arizona, yeah. So I'm just outside of Phoenix. So we're in Apache Junction, but I might you go out the back door and Superstition Mountain is there, and it's this amazing mountain. And so I love every day that I'm here.
Yeah, it's so lovely. And I've been to Phoenix actually a couple of times, and I really love it there. But obviously I haven't been kind of around that. But I wanted to chat to you today because things have been really awesome for you recently, with you and your husband, Anthony. You've just released a book in the last couple of months?
Actually the last day, actually my birthday is the end of January. It happened to release on my birthday. We did not plan that. It just magically worked out. So I was like, woohoo, we birthed something else. So yes, I'm way excited about it.
It's so good because the last time we chatted, you were literally just birthing the book. So you were literally just getting it kind of I don't know how it works in the book world, but you were just going through the last stages, whatever that is.
Is apparently the most painful part of the stages.
Yeah.
But
And I can see it on your face. Like,
it is worth it to get it out. But man, oh man, there were moments I was like, why are we doing this? But we wanted this information out there. And honestly, if somebody actually really wants to transform where they are in their health and they want to understand their body better and they want to make a better connection, understand even just the science behind it, the emotional work behind it, the physiology behind it, the nutrition behind it, it's all in there. It's all in there.
Yeah. And I love how your book is actually divided into those parts. It's like, okay, so here's the science piece, here's and you do this great piece on emotion at the end about the soul and your purpose. And I think that's so important for the topic that you're talking about, autoimmunity, which is obviously what the book is all about. But it's really great. How has it been going so far?
Good. Sales are rolling along. People are picking us up in podcasts and in stores and things too. So that's awesome. But it's on Amazon. So, I mean, people can go, we actually created a page with all of the information and special bonuses and things that they can get on our website. They can go to nourish123.com/th for Transformational Healing, and it'll take them right to the link to Amazon, but they can find us on Amazon if they just want to go directly there. So, but it's been great. And we even created a special component that if they get the book, there's the little QR codes, they can get this additional guidebook. And then there's a special experience that I created that people can go through and listen and actually have a detox experience emotionally. And so we added some additional pieces too that people can get once they buy the book and go through it. But we really actually wanted people to do something with the information. We didn't want it to be one of those, oh, this is nice information. We actually broke it down so there are actual tangible things people can do to get more information about them specifically. So it's not theory, it's actually they're doing the process. So
there's so many people read books and they don't actually action it. It's so common to just pick it up. I mean, I'm guilty of that, just picking something up and just reading it, but then not actually putting anything to action. So it's really nice that you, encourage people to take action after reading your book. But I think the topic about autoimmunity, and that's basically what you guys are all about. Like that's what you do. You help people overcome their autoimmune conditions. You discussed on our previous podcast your experience with
Mhm.
autoimmunity and how you managed to heal yourself from it, which is
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so celiac disease and Hashimoto's, so thyroid and gut basically of the autoimmune conditions. But so many people actually have autoimmune issues or are on the path to an autoimmune issue and don't realize it.
Mm.
And I think people see the word autoimmune and go, oh, I haven't had a diagnosis, so I'm good. What we'd love for people to do is stop it before it becomes that, but also understand that they can be empowered to reverse out of autoimmune. I've reversed out my mother's thyroid autoimmune issues. I mean, so it's not just a client, it's people who are in my life who were on medications for years and years and years and suffering unnecessarily because their doctors just handed them a pill and sent them on their merry way. So
Yeah.
our bodies are absolutely brilliant. They can do so many things if we just know how to help them do it. And healing is one of them.
Yeah. What is the prevalence of autoimmunity? Like, why do you think it's so important to help people at this time? Like,
Oh, geez. Yeah.
what is it like out there?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's right now there's 200 known autoimmune conditions, but there's only 20 actual tests for dead on accuracy on yes, you have this. So a lot of times doctors are kind of just putting pieces together and saying, well, it looks like an autoimmune disease, it smells like an autoimmune disease, it quacks like an autoimmune disease, so it must be an autoimmune disease. So a lot of people have them, but the doctors either aren't testing or there's no test for the specific issue. The reason I think this is happening at such a rate, because I mean, it's an epidemic at this point, the amount of people who have it, it's because there's a genetic component to it. But if people understand the concept of epigenetics, what they really understand is that we may have the genes, the predisposition for it, but that doesn't mean that those genes get influenced to activate or not activate. What we choose to do in our lives will activate those genes or not. So if somebody is eating foods that don't work for their body, if somebody is highly stressed and used to so much stress that their body just gets used to it and then keeps squashing the ability to process the stress, the body goes into this self-attack, right? So if we are not living our true purpose and who we really are, the body actually doesn't recognize us. And when it doesn't recognize something and it thinks it's a foreign substance, it goes into attack mode. So if we are not living true to who we are, even emotionally, mentally, physically, the body will look at parts of us and get confused and actually start this internal attack. So it's that concept of being truly who we are, emotionally, spiritually, all of the things. And people don't understand. They think it's just a physical piece. I'm like, there's so much more to it. But we, right now, we're under stress in ways that we just don't recognize. And we just, put up a pill or take a pill or ignore it or compartmentalize or push through. And our body goes, hey, how about we not keep doing that? And if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to attack the pieces of you that are not being true to who you are.
There's a saying that comes to mind when you said that. You've obviously, I'm sure you've heard it. Your genes load the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger.
Exactly. And that's a phenomenal way to say it. And I don't think they appreciate how much power they actually have over influencing whether the genes start to express for disease or whether they express for wellness. And we have so much, we could be so much more empowered. Traditional medicine or conventional medicine actually kind of takes that empowerment away from a lot of people. They think that they're just destined for this disease and at some point they're going to hit 40 and magically they're going to end up sick. That is not the case. It doesn't have to be that way. And even if you do cross into a diagnosis, it doesn't mean you can't roll back from it.
That's so
So
reassuring. Yeah.
we spend a lot of time with our clients on the emotional work as well and the spiritual work as well to understand the power they really have and that their body will sit up and listen and do what it was inherently designed to do if we can support it and understand the conversation it's having with us.
And it's so lovely to know that your body wants to heal. It wants to do its best. It
Yeah.
wants to be healthy. It wants to. I was explaining to you beforehand that I was doing like a kind of fitness series on the podcast, and we were talking about how your body wants to, be in shape. It wants to look its best, but you've just got to provide the environment for it to actually do so.
Yes, but a lot of people don't know what that environment looks like. They hear people, my microphone's playing nice with me right now. They hear people saying, well, work out or, do this, to eat this way, do these things. And it may not be the right way for your particular body. So if we're just cutting and pasting one way of doing things, many of us are not going to respond well to that because it's not designed for who we are. So understanding how to listen to your system and listen to your body is the best way to do it. So when we work with clients, we help them understand the conversation of their body so they're more empowered to understand the conversation as time goes on. It's not just this moment in time you fix it and it's over. You need to have this continual conversation with who you really are because we continue to morph and we continue to grow and learn and evolve. And if we are not evolving how we handle our environment, our external environment and emotional internal environment as well, our bodies are going to end up in a troubled space down the road somewhere. So we want to empower people to understand who they really are and then understand how to support that through their nutrition, through lab interpretation, through their emotional trauma release work.
And you know what? The part in your book, what you just mentioned before, it literally gave me goosebumps. Like when you said that when you're not living to your true self, so when you're not living your purpose, when you're not expressing who you are, when you're not feeling like yourself, then your immune system literally doesn't know who you are. It's like,
Doesn't
oh,
recognize you. Yeah.
yeah. And then that's what kind of triggers that can be a core cause of an
Yes,
autoimmune disease, which blows
absolutely.
my mind. It gives me goosebumps. Like when I think about it, it's kind of like I've never heard it put like that before, but it's really powerful and it's enough to make someone want to change, like when they
Mhm.
hear something like that.
Yeah, as long as they feel empowered to do so. Again, so many of us are so disempowered. We just go, well, I turned 40, so it must be this. Or, you hear these stories. Once you turn 40, this happens. Once you turn 50, this happens. I mean, not necessarily. We are using that as an excuse at this point. We don't recognize how much we have influence over what is literally happening to our bodies internally, externally. Our world around us is all being influenced by the choices that we're making. And a lot of those choices, that they're coming from a space of disempowerment, they won't support us to be the most amazing whole version of ourselves that we can be.
Yeah.
But we don't teach people that. Like, that's not, it's just, take two of these and call me in the morning. Like, have a Coke and a smile. Like, you start hearing these stories, you go, oh, okay, I'll do this thing to be happy today. Or how about we just find out the answers here and be able to express that? Which is why you and I were talking about thyroid earlier, why thyroid is the number one autoimmune condition right now. It was the first autoimmune condition actually officially on the books. But thyroid is impacting everything in our body. There's nothing in the body that isn't impacted by how the thyroid functions at some level. And what we find, especially for women, though men too, is that when you're not expressing yourself, like literally communicating. So think of the concept of your throat. Your thyroid sits right here. If you're not expressing and you're holding back and you are swallowing how you really feel and you feel disempowered, your thyroid, it's in that same area, will actually start getting attacked. So what we find, as my husband likes to say it this way, are you expressing yourself to your full content? And you really think about that statement, are you expressing yourself to your full content? Most of us aren't, because we feel like we're supposed to be a certain way, or we were raised to think we were supposed to be this person, but internally we know we're not. And so we're in conflict with the who we're supposed to be versus who we are. Right around the age of 35, 36, most people actually make this chemical shift in the brain. We actually start making this actual legitimate shift where a lot of people that do the work that we do, they know right around 36, people start having this change where, we look at it and a lot of people say it's an identity conflict, but it's known as like the identity shift moments in our lives. So somewhere between 36 and like 45, we start to challenge how we were raised and conditioned to believe who we were supposed to be, and who we actually are starts to come into play. And that conversation starts to happen. And some people become disempowered because of it. And they just kind of, huddle in and duck in. Then some of us start to become empowered because of it. Those of us who start to truly express who we are at that point, we release a lot of trauma. And I mean that like in our cells and tissues, because now we're expressing who we really are. And so that's why you see a lot of thyroid issues. If you think energetically within the system, where does the part of my body that's being attacked, where is it? And what other emotions and what other pieces does that signify? And if you think about the mouth, the throat, right, all this, it's our ability to communicate. So are you communicating to yourself in a truthful, true way? Are you communicating to others around you? Are you holding back? Are you trying to be who you think they want you to be so that they love you or they like you? So there's so much with that. And when we work with our clients on expressing who they really are, it's amazing how especially thyroid issues just start going away. The need for medications disappears. The need to rely on something else outside of their own self disappears. But thyroid is a big thing. And we've had clients, actually we start the book with a story about Megan. She was told 12 hours after she started working with us, her conventional endocrinologist called her and said, I just got your lab results back and they're so bad that we need to schedule surgery immediately or you will die.
Oh.
You will die. Like, it's kind of a dramatic statement. And she panicked. I mean, you hear that, you panic. So she calls me and she says, what do I do? And I said, look, I can't tell you what to do with this. What I can tell you is without a thyroid, it makes a lot of things a lot harder on your body and you just can't grow that back. So once it's gone, it's gone. So she sat with that information. She sat with all the research. She sat with all the pieces and she came back and said, okay, I want to give my body time to be able to learn this with the right support. So for the next 12 weeks, we worked on her emotional, she had lots of backstory trauma, lots of things in her life. We worked on that. We worked on her nutrition. We worked on all the pieces to help support her body. 12 weeks later, her labs were so much better. She was like, I'm on the right path. I'm going to keep going. I feel amazing. Keep going. A year later, she does her labs again with the same endocrinologist. 2 weeks after the labs come back, he still hasn't contacted her. So she calls into the office and she says, what's going on? And they said, doctor, will get back to you. So he gets back to her and says, look, I'm sorry it's taken me so long, but I thought the results were from someone else and that the lab screwed up because they're so amazing. I couldn't believe it was the same person that I met a year ago. So he sat with her and in the book, we actually have the email that she sent directly over to Anthony. But basically, in a nutshell, he said, you're a miracle. You should write a book because I've never seen this before. Now, the sad part of the story is that he's never seen this before. We see it all the time. And when you have a practitioner that you're working with who's never seen something before, they have no belief it's ever going to work. They're never going to help you support yourself in a way that would get you there because they don't believe it's a path that's even open and available. So what we decided to do, rather than her writing a whole book about her miracle, we decided to start the book with her miracle moment, but really saying the body is the miracle. What happened to her isn't. And we shouldn't be putting those up as like 1,000,001 kind of storylines. The body already has the miracle piece within it, and then they can heal. So she didn't lose her thyroid. She's back. I mean, her doctor kept saying, what have you done? She said, I did the emotional work. I did the nutrition work. And he's like, yeah, but what are you taking? She's like, I'm not taking anything. So even the concept, he couldn't even wrap his head around the idea that she had done something other than just take a pill and hope for the best. And we see that all the time. So when people understand and they believe and they have this better communication with themselves, they know what to do next. We give them the tools and they know which ones to use based on the results or the conversation that they're now understanding from their own systems.
I had a thyroid problem when I was 25, and even now I had some labs done yesterday for my thyroid because I've got some symptoms. I'm just like, oh, it could be my thyroid. So even yesterday I was having it checked, and I've had 2 kids, and so
It's a huge trigger. Pregnancy is a huge trigger for autoimmune. Yeah.
Exactly. So women after having kids, it's so common to have a thyroid problem. So I deal with thyroid problems, and it's so funny when you say that having trouble expressing yourself. So have you heard of Gary Zukov?
No.
Oh my God. So he's the author of Seat of the Soul, which
Okay.
is like one of the best books out there about spirituality. I absolutely love it. But he basically says that when you feel negative emotions, so when you're feeling angry or when you're feeling, jealous or upset in any way, just focus in on where you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And where you actually feel the pain. Like, so where do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your stomach? Do you feel it in your throat? And in so many words, he was just saying, look, if you feel it there often, then just don't be surprised if you get a stomach ulcer. Like, let's say
Yes.
you feel sick a lot. Like, and even back then, I thought, gosh, when I feel fear, when I feel scared, I feel like I can't speak.
Yeah.
And it gets trapped in my throat. And when I read that from Gary Zukov, I was just like, oh my God, that is why I have thyroid issues. And when I read it in your book as well, I was just like, oh my God, like, it's just, I'm reading this everywhere now. It's so true. And it's so, so fascinating. Like the fact that you can fix that, then you can perhaps even heal your thyroid, which people don't
Yes.
believe they can, right? Like,
Most people that are out there in the world of helping people fix things, the doctors, that they've never seen it, so they don't even lead people down a path that could help. And then it sounds like it's a 1 in a million when you hear it from somebody that's not in the conventional kind of traditional way of doing things. But what I would love for people to really recognize and understand is that if you are working with a practitioner, we actually have whole studies in the book on this too. If you're working with a practitioner who doesn't believe your healing is available to you, it's not because they can't help you get there. So the belief system within yourself, as well as the people that you're working with, is critical to the healing process. So move on to someone else who's not only just seen it once, like they don't talk about it like the miracle that happened 200 years ago. They see it all the time, because not only that vibration is different, and what you were just talking about, the guy that was the spiritual book that you were just talking about, your body is vibrating at specific frequencies all the time. And when you're vibrating in fear and you're vibrating in panic or jealousy, you're vibrating in a specific frequency, and then that frequency lands in your system somewhere. So we teach our clients to find that connection, that where is it physically in your body is the fear, where is you physically in the body is the joy, where are you noticing this? That's a communication center within your body to do something and to know how to actually be led down the path. If you're working with people who don't even understand how you can communicate with yourself, they're never going to be able to get you to a place where healing is a thing. We do illness management in this country, in most countries. It's illness management. It's not healing journeys, right? So it's the question is, what do you want? Do you want to just manage the illness and learn to live with it, or do you want to learn to live without it? And that isn't even a concept people can wrap their head around in the beginning, because that was never available, or we weren't told that, or we're told the people who do the healing are the weirdos. And I'm like, I was told that as a kid, like the alternative healing processes were the weird people, and they're the oddballs. And I'm like, oddball. Like, once I got to a point where I did all this stuff, I'm like, give me the oddballs. I want this to stop. And so work with somebody who has not only heard once down the road that this may have happened to somebody, that they're actually working with people who are in the healing journey.
When you mention how even something as simple as when you're feeling upset, or if you're feeling down, where are you feeling that in your body?
Mm-hmm.
Even something as simple as that, we overlook. We don't even look at that because we're so used to ignoring it and not being in our bodies. And the
we're
same
all
with
up here all the time.
all the time. And just being able to be present and conscious with yourself, and to be able to feel where you're feeling certain emotions. Like, emotions carry sensations,
Yes.
but we don't even consider that.
No.
So
If people start thinking of emotions as tangible, because emotions are, you can't touch them, right? But if you think about them as tangible, they go somewhere. They live somewhere in your body. And if we don't express them and we don't learn how to process them and dissolve them, the body will fester on that particular emotion, and then it pushes it in there. And then think about, like, if something, like you drop something on the floor, you drop food on the floor and it rolls under the refrigerator, you're not just going to leave it under there. It's going to fester and smell, and it's going to become a problem. We don't just say, oh, I didn't do anything, I don't know why. But we do that emotionally all the time. And we're taught to just keep pushing on, pushing through, ignoring it, compartmentalizing it. It will fester and become something. So all of our physical symptoms are some sort of representation of our belief systems, our emotions, how we view the world. And if we don't know how to dissolve that, and we don't know how to process that, we don't know how to rewire that part of our system, we will end up with physical responses because the body has to represent somehow what's going on. And a lot of people don't understand how those two are even connected, but we're whole beings. We're not just pieces. We're not just a thought. We're not just an arm. We're not just a heart. We're all of the things combined. And if your doctor is just treating you as a part, there's going to be something that's missed. Absolutely.
In your book, you lay out 3 steps to autoimmunity, if that's, I don't know if that's the appropriate way to say it, but you basically say that it starts with predisposition first from your genes, then leaky gut, and then you have a trigger. So before we kind of dive into that, because I want to just know a little bit more about that, we will be talking about the thyroid because it's because, like you said before, it's so prevalent, and it's, you know, I believe it's the most taken medication as well, right?
Yeah.
Levothyroxine. Is it levothyroxine?
Yeah. Yes.
That is crazy. So we definitely need to
Well, it's
dive
an easy
in.
fix, right? Here, just take this. It's fine. Everybody else is taking it. You should take it too. But it actually hurts the body's ability to continue to function optimally over time. So a lot of people they just think, oh, I just need to replace this. They're actually sending a signal to the body that says, well, if I'm going to replace this hormone, or I'm going to do the work for you, you don't need to keep doing it. So over time, typically most people need more and more and more of it because the body got the signal not to even do what it was supposed to do on its own. So it's suppressing the body's ability to function, which then impacts all the other pieces. It impacts the heart, it impacts the adrenal function, and it impacts hormone development and balance and production. It impacts how easy or not easy we go through menopause, what our periods look like. And, you know, even for men, they have around the same time they go through andropause, which is the same thing as menopause, essentially for women, where their body starts to shift and how it works and how it functions. And the thyroid has so much to do with that. Wow. Weight loss, temperature control in the body, hair growth. It's amazing how many pieces it impacts.
I can't wait to dig into all of that. That's going to be really, really important. But so coming back to predisposition, leaky gut, and trigger. So can you sort of explain that a little bit more in regards to autoimmunity and what people need to be looking out for in regards to those 3 things?
So the predisposition, let's go right into that one first. So predisposition means somebody in your family had an autoimmune condition. So if you think of it, just because your mother had a thyroid autoimmune condition doesn't mean you end up with a thyroid autoimmune condition. But if your mother had autoimmune, that means her body knew how to go into attack mode. So we just want to look at autoimmune as a whole. It doesn't actually, frankly, for this conversation, matter where it's attacking. It's that your body knew to attack. So you're getting that message or that gene from one of your parents. They got it from one of theirs, they got it from one of theirs. Now the question is it going to be influenced to express and turn on, or is it going to be influenced to stay dormant and not? That's why you don't get everything that every one of the things that your parents had, because just because you have the predisposition for it doesn't mean it actually expresses. You have the ability for it to express. Now, some people, the mother had Hashimoto's, you end up with celiac disease. It's still autoimmune that's really being passed forward. It's where you're weakest in your system or in your body that it will attack. So the predisposition is there. Again, that doesn't mean you automatically get it. It means that you're predisposed, that you can influence that gene to turn on. Then we've got the leaky gut. Every single person dealing with an attack like this has something called leaky gut. Essentially, that means that your gut is supposed to be, really tight, all the fibers in your gut and all the pieces. What happens is over time through stress, whether it's emotional, mental, or physical, the body does not differentiate. It just says, I'm under stress, causes an inflammatory response. What happens is the gut starts to kind of pull apart. And then there's little tiny pieces that things can slip through, especially pieces of food. Pieces of food slip through, slide into where the bloodstream is. There's just a tiny little layer stopping things going into your bloodstream from your gut. It's starting to pull apart. Food that hasn't been fully digested starts sliding in there, and the body says, whoa, we're not supposed to see this here. We must be under attack. Let's attack back. So now we've triggered that. And making sure you're eating the foods that are best for you. Like Anthony and I always do testing for people to find out specifically which foods are working against them and which ones are in their favor. To know what have you started with the leaky gut problem, you can start influencing what your body sees as an attack. So food sensitivities, huge problem for a lot of people. They have no idea because it's not an instant, usually it's not an instant, I eat it and I get swollen. It's not a true allergy. It's a response, a sensitivity causes inflammatory response, which causes all sorts of other problems in the body. So that's the leaky gut component. And then we've got the trigger. And you mentioned earlier, oh, right after you had babies, oh, you started noticing some of these thyroid issues. Pregnancy alone, delivery just unto itself, they're all stressors on the body. And there's a lot of hormone shift going on very dramatically. Pregnancy is a huge trigger for a lot of people. But you also could have had a trigger like you had a car accident. That could have been a trigger. You had someone in your family die that you were very close to. It can be a trigger. So it doesn't have to be a physical trigger. It can be a mental, emotional, or, you know, a moment where you lost your house because you lost your job and you went through a bankruptcy. That can be a trigger. They're all stressors on the system. And that's the kind of last straw kind of moment. So when you're not dealing with past traumas, when you're not dealing with your body's ability to manage its belief that it's safe, you can then trigger yourself into an autoimmune condition. I can't tell you how many people come to us and say, I just all of a sudden got this diagnosis. Just one day, all of a sudden I had this issue. And then, so I'm like, okay, so when did that happen? That happened 2 years ago. I said, okay, what happened 3 or 4 years ago? They're like, well, nothing, I don't know. And then they start talking. And the next thing, you know, well, my mother died. Oh, and I had to change jobs. Oh, and then I got a divorce. And then you're like, they're triggers. The body just can't take one more thing. It goes into self-panic, it goes into I'm not safe, and it goes into a chronic stage of fight or flight. Now the body has no energy to focus on healing. It's just trying to keep you from what it believes is not dying today. So they're the three pieces that we see all the time, every single case with autoimmune issues.
I mean, something like autoimmunity can express itself with symptoms, even decades after it's been sort of bubbling under the surface, right? Like it can be kind of...
Yeah, because the trigger doesn't take something just one day. It's been built up and it's built up and it's built up and now it's ready. It's like, again, it's that gun, it's loaded, hair trigger and something pulls.
Yeah.
So most people, I'm like, you don't get autoimmune overnight. That you've been potentially, most of our clients are suffering or have been suffering with symptoms for somewhere between 10 and 30 years. And they don't recognize it. Something that happened when they were 5, they don't realize got compounded. And then it was, oh, well, I had headaches. Oh, well, my period was not normal. Oh, I had this. And they don't realize, oh, I had stomach issues when I was 12. Oh, they're all signs. We're on our way to a problem. Let's do something about it now. But most of the time, doctors don't see us as whole people. So they don't recognize that all of those things are connected. And they're like, oh, well, here, just take this and call me in the morning.
It's really empowering to know that because it kind of gives you the energy and the enthusiasm to be like, okay, I need to make changes now rather than waiting for something to come along later on. So, you know, whatever you do when it comes to your health, like start now because like you're going to save yourself a lot of, you know, kind of strife in the future.
Yeah.
But when you mentioned leaky gut, you said that food sensitivities can cause leaky gut. Are there any other things that can cause leaky gut? What do people need to look out for in order to prevent that?
I mean, anything your body would deem as stress. So when you start to look at what does your life look like? If you were constantly on the go, constantly running, there is no downtime. You're eating as you're running along. You're skipping meals because you forget. You're overloading on food because you don't know when you're going to get the chance to eat again. You are not literally being able to take a moment. If you think I can't take time to do to work out or to be with myself, to just sit and read or just to sit and be, I don't have the time for that. What you're telling your body is, I don't have the time for you. You don't matter. You're at the bottom of the list of things that are important. And what your body hears is, I'm not being seen or heard or believed at how I need someone. I need you, myself. And that alone is a panic because the body believes if it's not being seen, it's not being heard, it's in trouble. Its chances of survival go way down when it's being ignored. So if we don't have that connection with our system and we don't know when to stop, or we've overloaded ourselves to the point where we literally feel like we can't, something is very wrong. That will actually cause all sorts of leaky gut and panic and inflammatory response in the system. And so many people are like, no, when I do this, then I can slow down. Well, once this happens, then I can slow down. And the next thing we know, it's months later and a year later and decades later, and we haven't done it. And now we're just in this state of frenzy, ignoring our system and its conversation with us. So that alone, so anything that causes us to feel like we're in trouble. Medications, actually, there's several medications on the market, which are one of their direct side effects is autoimmune disease. So there's several autoimmune diseases, lupus is one of them, that can get kicked into just from specific medications that are on the market. So when you look at medications, and I'm not telling people to stop taking their medication, there's a whole conversation that we would have to have with your doctor about that. But when you're taking medication, and it's not something that is naturally occurring, like it's not an herb, you're taking a medication from a lab, what happens is the body doesn't necessarily know how to break it down and do it because it's not part of the natural system of the body. It's something outside of the body coming in. So there's always, and I don't mean some of the time, most of the time, I mean literally every single time, there is always a side effect, an unintended consequence with every medication we take because it's not necessarily working with the body. It's working usually against its natural thought process or its natural system. So it has to offset somewhere. We had a client actually very recently whose doctor convinced her she had this little rash and she didn't want to change her diet. And we were like, okay, don't do you. And her doctor convinced her there was this new medication on the market and it was so good and it was going to help her so much. And there's no side effects. I'm like, that is not a thing. There is no such thing as no side effects. So they may not have heard of a lot of the side effects yet, but there's no side effects. So we looked at the side effects and she said, oh, these side effects don't seem big deal. I have this rash. It's annoying. I don't feel like changing too much more out of my diet. So I'm just going to take this. And I said, okay, you do you. We're going to support whatever choice you decide to make. Though, again, no, there's going to be something. 2 weeks later, she showed up for a meeting. She said, my hair's falling out. And I said, well, hair loss sometimes, and I said, but is it falling out a lot? She's like, yeah, it seems like it's a lot. I said, well, what have you changed recently? No, nothing. I said, except for the medication. She's like, yeah, but that's not a side effect. And I said, that may not be a known side effect, but your body is responding. 4 weeks later, she was completely bald.
Oh my gosh.
Completely, wears a wig now, completely bald. And she said, I don't understand what could be doing this. And I said, well, there's only one thing that has happened. And when you have a result that happens that fast, it's not from something that's just occurring naturally. Like you don't just up and lose all your hair within 2 to 4 weeks. So I sent her back to her doctor and I said, push back on the doctor. And she said, the doctor said, yeah, hair loss isn't a thing. I said, push back on her. So she talked to her colleagues and they're like, oh yeah, that's a pretty major sign we see with people. They get massive hair growth in some places or they get hair loss. And she said, well, what do I do now? And I'm like, you only have a couple choices. You can stop taking the med. She said, well, my doctor said there's another medication we can try. And I'm like, you can do whatever you're going to do, right? But listen, your body is screaming at you that there's another solution and it doesn't like the one you chose. So she really had to sit with that. And she was really in a state, but the doctor's kind of like, well, that happens. And just kind of went on to the next, well, try this one instead. But they just diagnosed her with alopecia. I'm like, see, you caused alopecia with the medication. That wasn't something your body was inherently already doing. So
you know what? It's absolutely amazing how we hand over our health to another person because they're called a doctor.
Yeah.
We just trust them with everything, even though the signs are there, like we're losing our hair, alopecia, weeks after taking this medication. But because the doctor said so, then we just trust them with everything, and we just think, oh, but I must be safe still, though,
right?
Because
well,
the
they
doctor
say it's
prescribed
safe.
it. Yeah,
and I'm like, well, what's the definition of safe? So let's talk about that. Is safe? Are you still safe? If you don't die, is that safe? Like losing all your hair, is that still considered safe? Like, again, we got to really listen to the terminology it's been proven safe. I'm like, for how long? Who got studied? Did they already have other issues going into this? What were the side effects? What were the small side effects? What were the large side effects? How long has it been? Because some people don't get some of the side effects for a while. But if our body is doing something that dramatic, typically either you've ignored something to a point where your body finally went, here's the 2x4, or we're doing something that causes us to be out of the natural order or system that we were already designed to be within.
Right,
And
right.
sometimes we just don't want to wait long enough. Like she'd only tried for a couple of weeks to see what we could do with the rash, and it was getting better, but it wasn't getting better enough, right? So her timeline, so she went, and I'm like, well, here's the timeline now. And what we also, I think it's unfair to look at traditional medicine and think they're going to be anything other than how they were trained. They're trained in putting the pieces together, putting the symptoms together, making a diagnosis, calling it something, and then aligning that with some sort of medication or surgery. Doctors are not trained in nutrition. They're not trained in herbs. They're not trained in how to work with the body. They're trained to stop a symptom by forcing it to go away through medications or surgeries. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate that. They think the doctor is going to give it, but unless they were trained, which most of them weren't in nutrition, they're not actually, it's out of their scope of practice to even have a conversation with you about nutrition. Because they're not nutritionists, they're doctors. It's different. So I think it's unfair. A lot of people are like, oh, the doctors, it's unfair. I'm like, but listen, you're going to a source to ask for information on something that you get mad at them when they give you the information the way they were trained. So if their answer is medication and surgery and you're mad, it's because you went to the wrong source for the information, right? Like that's not, yes, they can be amazing. And I'm telling you, if I get my arm chopped off, I am going to the hospital. I'm not sitting there with a bunch of herbs. They are designed for emergency medicine. They're designed for information. They're not necessarily designed to help the body heal. So it's different. So I think people need to wake up a little bit and recognize if you're going here and you're asking for help over here, you need to understand how they've been trained and what information they could give you. They can't go out of their scope of practice.
Right. So I think we should definitely dive into the thyroid because it's basically something that's come up a lot in my podcast episodes, because if a woman is wanting to look and feel her best, if she's wanting to lose some weight but she's finding it difficult, if she's having trouble sleeping, and if she's got all of these obstacles in her path on her journey to look and feel her best, then looking at her thyroid health is a really important piece of her journey, because it could be preventing her from losing weight, preventing her
Yes.
from getting adequate sleep, and just all of the symptoms that come with thyroid issues could be hindering her journey. So let's go into the thyroid then. When it comes to the thyroid, can you dive into the thyroid hormones and how it works, and therefore where the issues can come in? Yeah.
So basically, what most people don't understand is that the TSH, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone, that's the one doctors check most often. And a lot of times they don't check anything beyond that. And if it's too high or too low, then they medicate you accordingly. What they don't understand is that that isn't coming from the thyroid. That's
Right.
actually coming from, right. So it's telling the thyroid what it needs to do. And if there's a miscommunication, then the thyroid isn't going to behave properly. So to medicate the thyroid wouldn't be the issue at that point. Now, if the immune system is attacking the thyroid isn't the problem. The immune system's attack is the problem. And most doctors don't bother to check. There's two different labs results that we look at. There's TPO and TAA that tell, is this an autoimmune condition, which 90% of the time it is.
And they're antibodies,
is it
right?
the immune system? Yeah. When you get hypothyroid or hyperthyroid, 90% of the time it's an autoimmune attack. It's not the thyroid going bad. Typically, our body just doesn't go bad. There's a reason. So if the doctor isn't even recognizing or cares that the immune system is the attack, they're not actually correcting the actual issue, which is the immune system's attack. I mean, if you've got a bunch of little kids running around and one of them goes over to another one and starts beating on him, you don't just go over and put Band-Aids on the kid that's being beaten. You take the child off of him that's hurting him, right? So the doctors are putting the Band-Aids on the little kid who's bleeding. They're not stopping him from being hurt. We want to stop the person from being hurt. So if your doctor's not looking at the connection to autoimmune, and they're not even testing for that, but most of them don't, because their diagnosis and their approach to fixing it wouldn't change. They still are going to medicate. And again, all it's doing is Band-Aiding.
Yeah, just to quickly cut in, sorry.
Yeah.
When it comes to my lab tests, I
Hmm.
literally had to ask, like you have to ask to have your
Yes.
antibodies tested, and even then, I was met with a kind of confusion, like, why do you want to do that? Like,
Yeah. Why? It
interesting. I
won't
never get
change
that.
what we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't care. Like if it's autoimmune, it actually tells you more about what's going on. So the antibodies become a really important component. So there's three right there, and then there's 10. I think there's 10 if I'm getting all this right. Anthony. So Anthony does most of the lab work here, or actually all of the lab work here. There are 10 different markers that he likes to look at, because from there, what a lot of people don't understand is that the conversion, your body has to convert these hormones into hormones that your thyroid can do something with. The conversion happens in the liver. So if your body isn't converting properly, you may actually have a liver congestion or a liver problem, not a thyroid problem. So Anthony wants to know, what is the conversion? So if you're not taking T4 and converting it properly into usable T4 and converting it properly into usable T3, your body actually is the liver may actually be the problem. But again, we're medicating. So what we're doing is we're giving people more T4. Just if the body can't convert, it doesn't matter how much T4 you give it, it can't transfer it into something that is usable for the system. So if doctors are only looking at three things, they don't actually know, is it a conversion problem? Because if it's a conversion problem, there are 5 different foods that Anthony looks at and says, well, if you're not converting this way, then I'm going to recommend you do this. If you're not converting this way, then eat this. If you're not converting this way, eat this. And a lot of the times it's just, you need to eat 2 Brazil nuts every day and your body will convert better. It's simple things like that. You don't have enough seaweed in your diet, you can convert better. Like you don't have enough iodine in your diet, you can convert better. So it becomes really fascinating from our standpoint to say, well, if your doctor, your endocrinologist, your specialist isn't looking at these 10 different markers, he actually doesn't know where the problem occurs. And again, they just go, well, just give her more hormone, just give her more hormone, just give her more hormone. Now your body's got too much hormone. And if it's not now detoxing properly from too much hormone, it's actually reabsorbing back into the system. It's actually being reabsorbed back into the body, and it's actually now giving you more overload of hormone. So now that doesn't just affect your thyroid, that affects your ability to sleep. It affects your ability to lose or gain weight, because we have clients on both sides of that. The ability to grow hair or lose hair where you don't want it. Your ability to just feel good, have energy when you wake up in the morning, not feel sluggish all day long. It's your ability to feel motivated, feel excited about life again, feel joy. Like these are all affected by the balance of your thyroid hormones, which affect the balance of your sex hormones as well. So a lot of people don't fully appreciate, but if your body isn't converting properly, it may just be a liver issue. You're overloading, you're not properly detoxing, your body's detox process is getting congested. So giving it more hormone doesn't help that at all. So we see people constantly with hormone issues, constantly, and doctors just medicating. Most of our clients come off their medications. Of course, we help support them as they're having that conversation with their doctor, because we can't just tell you to stop taking medication. But they wean from their thyroid medication, and some of them have been on them for 10, 20, or 30 years.
I mean, so if someone's getting symptoms, then
Mm-hmm.
they've looked at the books, they've looked online, they see all the symptoms, they're like, oh my gosh, I have that, I have that, I have that. But my thyroids are coming back normal. My thyroid lab tests are
Normal.
coming back normal in quotes.
Normal.
So, I mean, what lab tests do we need to be asking for when we go to the doctor?
Well, there's 2 issues going on here. First of all, traditional medicine looks at normal levels. Normal simply means that you have fallen in the top 95 percentile of people. So they're not saying it's a healthy way to be. They're saying the average person, the 95 percentile of people, fall into this category. And you fall into that category, so you're normal. You don't want to be normal. You want to be optimal. You want to be healthy. And normal and healthy aren't the same thing. And a lot of people are confused by that concept as it is. What you want is optimal. So when Anthony's looking at things, he uses optimal ranges, which means where is it optimal to be for you to be in a healthy space? And it means that your body is working optimally, not normally. We don't want to be normal, because normal is common. And commonly, if you look at most people, especially those of us in North America, we're not healthy. Like, you don't want to be a normal, unhealthy person. You want to be an optimal, healthy person. So you really want to ask your doctor, are we looking at normal levels? Are we looking at optimal levels? Totally different ballgame.
Do you
So
know the
Anthony
optimal levels off?
reevaluates.
Do you know them off the top of your head by any chance?
I
Or
do
you
not.
do?
And it
Okay,
also
yeah,
depends on
I
where
was
you are,
taking a
which
shot.
country you're in. The numbers will look a little different because the labs come back differently. So I don't know them off the top of my head. But what Anthony does is he runs you through this whole system that we have, and he goes back and then he sits down with you and then he interprets with you what the information is telling you, because it's a story. And just because you might be high here and low here doesn't mean something is horribly wrong, but it's telling us a story of patterning. And we want to know what's happened to you before. And a lot of people, doctors also don't look at the storyline. Like we had a doctor tell one of our clients, like freak her out. Oh my God, this is so high and you need to get on a medication immediately. And Anthony's like, well, wait a minute. Let's look at all of your thyroid storyline for the last 5 years, because he had her backstory and the stuff we had done with her. And he's like, since you got off the medication, your body started, this marker got better, this marker got better, this marker got better, this marker got better, since you've been off your medication. But when you were on the medication, every one of those things was getting worse. So your doctor isn't looking at the story. Your doctor is just looking at this one number and saying, well, this means you must be medicated. But your body has said for many years, when you're on the medication, things were actually worse. Then since you've weaned from it and started supporting your body. So she just needed a little more time to get into the full optimal ranges. But overall, she was doing better. Plus, we were like, how do you feel? She's like, I feel great. So how you feel also has a lot to do. And symptoms typically lead and the labs follow behind. It takes a little bit for the labs to catch up. But it's amazing when doctors don't see that part of the story. They just look at this moment in time and they say, well, this means medication. I'm like, not if before her body showed medication was making all the numbers worse. And now that she's off it, all the numbers are getting better. They're just not in full optimal range yet.
So when you go to the doctor and you have your thyroid tested, they will automatically give you a TSH
Yeah, they just do
test.
TSH. It's like a normal, yeah.
Right. But you would need to then kind of poke a little bit and ask for
Yes, ask them.
antibodies. And
I
what
want to
else?
see free T4. I want to see total T4. I want to see free T3. I want to see total T3. Because just because you have a total amount of a hormone doesn't mean your body's actually utilizing it. So when you look at the free version, the free T3 or free T4, that means that's what your body's capable of using on its own. So it's not how much hormone you have, it's what it's actually able to take and utilize, convert into a usable form. So Anthony looks, and again, there's 10 of them. So we like to look at the 2 antibody markers. We like to look at, TSH is helpful. We also like to look at total T4, total T3, free T4. And in the book, he actually lists out all of the things for people to look at. But we also want to know kind of more of the story of what's your overall sense. It's not just thyroid. What's the rest of your body up to? And there's basic tests that most doctors are doing and just saying, oh, well, you're a normal range and that's the end of it. Anthony looks for patterns. So he's saying, well, if you're low in this and high in this, and this is out of optimal range, that actually is telling you a whole story that there's this other challenge that we need to start supporting. Or maybe the workouts that you're doing are too much for your body, or not enough for your body, or not in line with what your body needs right now. So we start to look at, because if you're working out in a way that your body doesn't appreciate, that can actually cause a level of stress and put your body into a level of panic. So he looks at all of that too. So it's, what's the story for you? Not just, let's just stick you on the assembly line, put you through this process. It's black and white answer, and that's the end of the story. You're a unique individual person. So if you can understand what the story means, most of our clients come out of their lab meetings with Anthony like so elated and so empowered to understand what their body has been telling them. They end up learning way more than they ever did before. They have different questions then if they do go back to conventional medicine with their doctors, how to do things moving forward. And then they understand why they want the labs done the way they want them. And they know what to do with them. So empower yourself, take control, learn these things. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's not necessarily fully easy, but once Anthony explains and they get a sense for the why and what does this really mean for me, they're whole different people after that. And the empowerment alone can actually lower your body's ability or feelings of safety, which lowers the attack and lowers your body's ability to freak out.
So you mentioned that exercise can be a trigger, which absolutely, if someone trains too much, if they're hammering it at the gym, and I've been speaking to kind of bodybuilders and fitness models recently, and that conversation has come up a lot, how the menstrual cycle can be affected, but then also the
Yes.
thyroid can be affected as well. Dieting too hard,
Yep.
fasting too much,
Yep.
eating too little calories, all of those things can trigger an attack on the thyroid.
Hmm.
Why is the thyroid so um, why is it so tender to these things? Why is it affected so easily? What is the story there?
Well, there's so many systems that are dependent upon the thyroid functioning. So if other systems are not doing their jobs as well either, it puts more pressure on the thyroid. So if you start looking at the body as a whole system, you can't just take a part out and the body just work, right? Like if you take out the gallbladder, even though the body can function without it, doesn't mean it now doesn't have to circumvent an entire beautiful, miraculous system to get up over on it. Now it's putting more pressure on the liver. It's putting more pressure on the system, which puts more pressure on the thyroid. So if even just the idea that your liver is converting the thyroid hormones, if you are now missing a gallbladder, it works in conjunction with the liver. It's now putting more pressure on the liver too, and now the body can't convert properly. So if you really look at the body as a whole piece, and you've had hysterectomies or you've had surgeries or implants, actually we see this all the time with implants and IUDs, but the body doesn't like it when you put something in it that it didn't start with and leave it there. And it certainly doesn't like losing something it started with. Now, I don't want to panic people if they've had surgeries where they've had pieces removed. Don't worry, there's a way around it. But you need to support certain pieces of the body more when things like that have happened. And doctors don't take us through that process. They don't say, well, once your gallbladder is gone, we've had doctors tell our clients, you should have your gallbladder removed because it's an unnecessary organ. There are no unnecessary organs. Let's just start with that. The body can function without it, but that doesn't mean it's unnecessary. It has a job, right? So, full hysterectomies, there's an emotional attachment to what's going on there. And we don't appreciate that as a whole. So everything is synergistic. Everything is helping each other emotionally, mentally, and physically. It's all working together. So taking pieces out. But we don't understand how the environment around us, even just the air quality, can be putting more pressure, especially on the liver. And then the liver has an impact on what's going on with the production of sex hormones, which then impacts the thyroid. So if your cycle is out of whack, if your bowels are not moving the way that they should, if you are not sleeping properly, there's a cycle the body goes through energetically, emotionally, there's a cycle. So if we're not supporting that cycle and we are not regularly getting our period, we are suffering with PMS, we are bleeding too heavily, we are taking medications to squash symptoms like that, it will have a direct impact on the thyroid, always. It can't not, because the system is one whole cohesive unit.
And how do the risks change throughout a woman's life stages? So we mentioned pregnancy before, perimenopause, menopause. Does the risk increase during those times?
Yeah, I mean, of course it does, because, first of all, they tell us that we're all just slaves to our hormones, which is not true. We actually can be empowered to have control over it. But we go through a cycle every month, and certain times of the month, we need to be more aware of what the body is doing, because it needs different nutrition, it needs different workout styles, it needs different things as we're in each phase of our cycle. Even our sleep patterns will shift. But if we are not open to that and we're trying to force ourselves to be this high energy person all the time and push through and push through and push through, what we're doing is we're forcing our body into a space where it becomes fearful and it's not being heard. So if we don't understand our systems as a whole, especially for women, we will override our ability to do that. And a lot of our clients are former athletes, professional athletes, people who are golf pros that are constantly at this high level. You learned how to push past the conversation your body was having and squash it. Anthony is a bodybuilder. We understand people at this high level. I was a gymnast for many years of my life. I was a gymnast all the way through into college. You learn to push past emotionally, mentally, and physically, and it's celebrated. You mentally push past that. Well, there is a point, if your body is showing up with symptoms, that was too far. And yes, you may have won the race, but in the end, you started ruining your system. We have to come down from that. And if our identities are so wrapped into the idea that we can push past and we can suffer through our identity, so the idea of being just being, not doing, just being, human being, is so frightening to our systems because that's so ingrained in our identity. We will continue to push past that because we don't know who we are without it.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of the work that we do. Who really are you? What were you conditioned to move past? And what is your body really saying? And do you still want that response?
I think for most of us, that's the work, isn't it? Like, who are you without your work? Who are you without your busy lifestyle, without,
Yeah.
the school runs? And when you're alone by yourself, who are you? And that
Mm-hmm.
is the work, I think, for a lot of
Yes.
people, because a lot of us can't sit with ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? Like, why can't we just sit with ourselves and just be?
Oh,
It's
we were trained not to because people who do that are lazy. People who do that are not successful. People who do that are just wasting time. And I'm like, well, there's a difference between being and wasting time.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. But I
I
can stop people in their tracks. I'm like, what is it? Two questions. Who are you? And what is it you want? And they're like it paralyzes people, paralyzes
It's
them.
like the question, what makes you happy? And
Yeah.
people are like, I don't know. But then you ask them, what makes you upset? And then they'll have a whole list. They'll be like, oh, this
Yeah.
makes me upset, this drives me crazy, blah, blah, blah. But then what makes you happy? They're like, actually, ooh.
Yeah. Well, we're hardwired to look for all of the things that could be bad. We are not hardwired for happiness. We're not. Because happiness doesn't keep us alive. Not dying today. Let me find out what's going to kill me. I'm going to focus in on that. So we're really good at seeing what's wrong because we're wired for that. We actually have to be trained and actually learn, conditioned to look for what's happy and feel safe. But if we're looking outside of us for what makes us happy, like I had a client one time say, well, coffee makes me happy. I'm like, did you see the power that you just gave over to coffee? Like, coffee makes you happy? She's like, well, I'm like, it's not the coffee, it's your attachment, your emotional understanding of what's happening with the coffee is part of the anchoring system on that. So, what really makes you happy there? She's like, well, it gives me time to just be in the morning and be myself. And I'm like, the coffee isn't giving you permission to do that. You're giving yourself permission to do that. She was like, oh. Like, so coffee doesn't make you happy. It might be part of your happiness moment, but the coffee doesn't have that kind of power. She was like, huh. So even just understanding things like that, but understanding that again, we're wired to not be attacked or to get out of the way of danger. And we push that down from generation to generation. So if your mother was attached to the concept that being busy was safe, that also genetically got pushed through to you, and it got pushed through to you in conditioning in your life. So a lot of what we understand of who we are was actually pushed through our genetic profile as well.
And push through to our kids as well.
Yes.
Like,
And that's the thing. We can stop that. And that's actually generational trauma. We work a lot with generational trauma and understanding that you can actually push those fear danger moments for 14 generations. So if you are a child of someone from the Holocaust, you are a child of somebody that was actually in danger or being attacked or being that in a culture will push through the genetic profile as well as conditioning and belief systems. So we're getting predisposed to fear from the people before us based on their experience and their perception of life. So that's a huge thing. Like my parents were parents of people who were in the Depression. They are in fear places differently because their parents were in fear places that got pushed through to them, that they didn't have enough food and they didn't have enough money and they didn't have enough safety. And that gets pushed down from generation to generation to generation without us realizing it. So people who are like, I just feel like I'm anxious all the time. I'm like, some of that anxiety isn't actually yours. You're taking that on. How do you undo stuff that wasn't even yours to begin with? We do work around that too.
and you know what? It's mad because when you talk about it, it makes me realize that this is a journey. This is something that you need to consciously decide, and you need to be like, okay,
Yes.
I'm about to go on this health journey, and it's going to be big. I'm going to need some help. But it's so reassuring to know that if someone does have a thyroid problem, that they can overcome it and they
Absolutely.
can come off medication,
Yes.
right?
All the
So
time.
I mean, that is
All the time.
that is so reassuring to know,
Yeah.
and I'm sure loads of it because people are told that once they're on thyroid medication, they're on it for life. Yeah,
Yes. And that
but
is
that's not necessarily
not
the
true.
case. It may take a lot of uphaul, like you might have to what's that word? Upheaval
Mm-hmm.
of some of your habits, your lifestyle, your beliefs, the way you behave. but it is possible. So if someone had a thyroid problem, they're like, oh my gosh, so I can come off my medication? Seriously? How do I do that? What are some simple nutrition, lifestyle, whatever simple steps you have for them that they could implement from now that would help them on their way?
This is a great question. So there's two categories of foods that Anthony and I, without doubt, will tell people are not working in your favor. I don't care who you are, what issues you have. If you think everything's fine, these are not helping you. And especially they're not helping you if you have a thyroid issue. So gluten, which people don't love to hear. So this is anything that's wheat, barley, rye, or arguably oats, depending on which study you're looking at today. So that's on the side, but wheat, barley, rye, and oats, 100%. Not like I reduce it, like literally it has to be out of your system because it can stay in your system, wreaking havoc and causing attack for up to 6 months. 6 months. Like there's study after study after study that support that. And we actually, all those studies are talked about in the book as well. The second category of food is dairy, which people don't love that either. So it's all of the things from an udder, as we say. So it's butter and cheese and milk and ghee and anything that came originally from an udder, whether it's a goat or a cow or a camel, or camel milk was a huge thing for a while. And we go into a lot more detail in the book about this, but energetically, we were not designed to take in milk from something that was not our mother. We don't have the ability to break it down. I mean, if you think about if you just look at the way nature created stuff, she already figured it all out for us. We don't need to do all of this other stuff. So, and gluten is just something that doesn't grow on trees. Like there are no bread trees, there are no pasta trees. We don't have that. So it's a process that has to be broken down in a way for us to even be able to digest, and we don't properly digest as it is.
Didn't you say in your book, you gave a really crazy statistic? You said that ancient gluten had a certain number of 8 chromosomes, but then today gluten has like over 100?
64.
Oh, 64, right.
Yeah. So 8 times. And so it's not even the same species as far as I'm concerned, right? So, because people say, oh, we've been eating this for years. I'm like, yes, but we've also been eating it differently. It was not commercialized. We were making it at home. We were hand doing a lot of this stuff. So by all means, if you think that this is still something you want to do, you want to go hand grind your own stuff and you want to mill it yourself and you want to soak it all and you want to make it on your own, by all means do it. But we have the ability in a way that we've never had ever before to be able to tap a button and have food delivered to us instantaneously. That is not actually how we were designed to eat. Right? So we have all this processed stuff that's already broken down and we're able to get to certain things faster in our systems. And there's so much pesticide and so much processing and so many chemicals and so many things in this food. If you can pull it off a tree or out of the ground or spear it with an arrow or hook it on a fish hook, we were meant to eat it for the most part. If not, our body doesn't get to do the process that it does. And I'm not saying that I haven't had a gluten-free pizza recently. Like I'm not saying that hasn't happened. But when it's a regular thing, it's every day and there's no green food in your diet ever, and there's no whole foods in your diet, and there's no organic foods in your diet, you are taking in at a higher rate pesticides and problems and chemicals and issues at a rate that we've never been up against as a human species before.
Right.
And we just don't have the ability to manage all of it. So if your body's already stressed and we're having all the food is causing a problem and we're already emotionally stressed and we're pushing and pushing and pushing, our body only has so many resources to be able to manage that.
Are there any nutrients that you recommend that we should be having to support the thyroid? So selenium is one.
Yeah, selenium. Actually, sodium is a really important component to all of that too. Iodine is really important. So you really want to sit there, but as a whole, because we'd rather not see people supplementing for that kind of thing. What we'd rather have people do is take a step back and say, let me not even need to know that level. How many colors are in the food that I'm eating? Each color represents a different vitamin, and certain colors actually help other vitamins absorb. So if you remember back in art school or art class as a kid, when you look at the color wheel, opposite colors, so purple and orange, and green and red, they're opposite colors. When you eat foods that have opposite colors in them, they actually help the absorption rate better with the nutrients in the opposite color.
No way. That is the
right?
first time I've heard that.
Isn't that cool?
Oh my God. I'm going to repeat
So
that in like every
nature
podcast
didn't
going
think we were
forward.
all that bright. So she just made it easy for us. She just have colors. So if you just eat a variety of colors, chances are you're actually getting the nutrients.
A variety of
and
colors in
you're
one meal,
absorbing
then
them.
obviously, like it
Yeah,
just
you can get
trying
it throughout the day.
yeah.
It doesn't have to
Okay.
be one meal, but it's actually visibly better for your system too, because it sees all the colors and you're actually more likely to absorb better when you see beautiful food.
Like
So that goes into that. And just a variety of food. What happens to a lot of us, we get stuck in our rut and we eat the same six meals over and over. You do want to shake it up a little. You're not just eating chicken every day, or you're not just eating fish every day. You're actually moving it around because the body needs different things. So when you realize and we stop looking at specific nutrients and we look at the body as a whole, nature already created this stuff for us. So just because you're taking something by a supplement doesn't mean you're absorbing it properly if you don't have the right mix of nutrients. So I'd rather people kind of take a step back, not go down that rabbit hole so hard, and say, how many colors do I eat in a day? How many different varieties of foods do I eat in a day? Am I eating raw and am I eating cooked? Am I feeling like when it's wintertime, you want more cooked root vegetable kind of food? When it's outside and it's hotter and you want more raw foods, you want more salads, you want more things that cool the body. So just what's naturally occurring in the state that you're in the area that you live in, those foods also give you more nutrients at that time of the year. So you want to eat what's naturally growing at that times of the year too. So nature didn't make it all that difficult, but we then start trying to scientific our way through all of it. And we can do that with our clients all day long if you want to. But what it does is it disconnects them from here. They're all up in here. Well, I need to have this, and I measure this, and this goes in here, and then this. I'm like, just eat from this way and get connected with yourself and nature, and you actually will do better and won't have to think so hard about it.
Yeah. That is such good advice. And my mind is blown by what you just said about the colors. That was it for me. That's like the perfect way to top this off, because for me to actually take that way to learn something from this, that I can repeat easily to other people, then that's a massive.
Well, it's so visual, right?
Yeah,
like
it's so visual,
so easy. Like little kids figure it out. If you can explain it to a 3-year-old and she can go, I like my colors, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't have to go to school for nutrition. We shouldn't have to learn all this stuff. We should naturally, there's no other animal out there like with a chart saying what other things do I need to eat today? They know how to do it instinctively. And we just severed our ability to really be instinctual because we try to override and be smarter than our bodies. And they're already so brilliant.
Do you have any final kind of tips about supporting the thyroid and immune health in general? Is there anything that you think people should know that you haven't covered yet?
Communicate to your satisfaction, as Anthony would say. Make sure you're not holding back. And I don't mean you go and scream at everybody, but at the very least, start having a conversation with yourself on a daily basis where you sit down and you just allow yourself to write for 3 pages. And you look and see, what am I really holding back on? What am I really not communicating? What am I really not saying? And a lot of it's, what am I not even saying to myself? So if you think about thyroid being the communication center of the body, it communicates out to all of the other pieces of the body. We are communicating and it's all here. Think about where it sits. All the organs, they sit. Yeah, no, there's no accidents.
No accident.
Really think, how am I communicating with self, with others, with the universe, with spirit, with my soul? How am I actually communicating? And if I'm holding back and I'm not communicating it true to what I really need and what I really want and what I really desire, you are going to be suppressing your ability to function, and that suppresses the functioning of the thyroid. And then just look again, how many colors am I eating? Am I eating in a way that I know is supporting me? Or am I just stuffing food in because I'm not leaving time for it? And then just kind of look as a whole, am I being true to who I am? That alone will change things for people.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kirstin. That was amazing. Again, thank you again for another podcast. That was awesome. How can people find you, get hold of your book? Take us through that.
So I mean, it's on Amazon, but again, if they want to get like direct right to it, they can go to nourish123.com/th. or just nourish123.com is our website. It'll take them. The book is right at the top. They can click on it. And again, if they do that, then they'll also get access to the guidebook and the exercises and the other bonus material that we have as well, because we want people to go through and actually use the information. I'm telling you, if people just do what we say in this book, they're going to absolutely see results and differences in their body and their minds and their thoughts and all of the fun things.
And I can also attest it's an excellent book. So everyone should definitely buy it if this is something that they want to learn more about. So, but thank you so much, Kirstin. That was so good. And hopefully we get to do this again.
Yes. Well, you know where we are. And if you want to get way deep into the nutrients and stuff, Anthony is always a good man for you.